Hello, Colin Hung here for Sway Health, and I am here in Nashville, Tennessee at the annual Vive conference, and I am so excited for my next guest. I don't get the opportunity often to talk to a health IT leader from a provider organization about healthcare marketing. Me and my next guest are going to sit down and bust a few myths when it comes to where they discover new technologies, how they decide to choose one vendor over another. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for you to hear from Anika Gardenhire. She is the Chief Digital Transformation and Informational Officer at Ardent Health, a multi-location, multi-site facility that provides care to the folks in Tennessee. She and I are going to talk about what works and what doesn't work with her and her team and how they make decisions in terms of health technology. I can't wait for you to hear some of her amazing insights. Let's get to it.
Sway Health.
Anika, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to sit down with you because I'm going to get a chance to ask you some very pointed questions about how a vendor might be able to get to you. But before we do that, can you give us a little bit about your background and your organization?
Sure. I work for Ardent Health Services. We are a health system that is laser focused on the consumer. We have around 30 hospitals and around 200 sites of care. We operate in 8 markets in 6 states, and super excited to be there. I am the Chief Digital and Transformation Officer. I'm a registered nurse by clinical background and focus on technology and transformation for the organization. And I lead our technology and consumer services department.
First of all, I find it interesting you're using the word consumer.
Yes.
That's not a common term from most health systems.
Mhm.
What made you choose to use that term? Why that conscious decision?
Yes. So I think that the reality is we are focused on understanding that our patients have choice and we want to treat people as if they have choice. It leads us to be focused on building an experience that people would choose and understanding that we have to work for that and work for that choice every day.
I like that because in healthcare, I mean, yes, there's competition. That's of course
Yes.
growing every day.
Mhm.
But I think the big competition is doing nothing, right? And
Absolutely.
so treating, kind of thinking about that consumer mindset
Mhm.
and having the choice of care or just not doing anything
I think
can
we
really motivate
definitely
you.
agree with you, right? Stagnation is the biggest enemy that we have.
Right, right. Sitting down and doing nothing, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm really happy to sit down with you. I'm very excited because one of the things that we like to do is, sit down with folks like you who are leaders, leading the digital transformation, leading the technology parts of large organizations, because there's a lot of myths out there about what works and how to get your attention and attract your eye to the new and wonderful solutions that everyone out there is
Mhm.
coming up with. So I'm going to hopefully bust some myths with you today.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So let me ask this one first of all from you. How do you discover new solutions that are not built by an incumbent solution of yours already in your or healthcare organization?
I think that's such a good question because I would agree that that's probably one of the greatest myths out there. For me, I purposefully discover problems first.
Okay.
I discover problems inside of our organization, places where we have friction, opportunities for innovation first. And then the way that I typically discover new solutions is I survey the market to understand who's actually trying to do something to solve that problem. Um, I don't think that I've ever responded to a cold email or a cold call or a right, but definitely we work to hone in and sort of marry the problem inside of our organization, and then we look for solutions that are really solving that. And we have teams that work through talking to peers, understanding if others have tried to solve it, sort of surveying the market more broadly, talking to VCs, but I'm typically seeking something very specific.
So you start from the very base, the problem,
Mhm.
on the clinical side, the operational side. Do they
Absolutely.
typically come to you with a problem, or are you in such close collaboration that you're kind of discovering the problems with them?
Both,
Okay.
right? So, we're in shared operational meetings participating in that governance. There are folks participating in the broader sort of technology and consumer services governance from an operations perspective. But also, we have our we call it our impact and transformation committee, where
Hmm.
people will bring problems and then we work to really solve those together. So we do have a governance committee where people can say, hey, we have a real problem spot here and we haven't seen something already sort of in the environment, or we've already tried process to solve it. We think we need some additional support here to solve it. And so we do it that way as well.
Now, you mentioned in your answer, you survey the market.
Mhm.
What does that really mean? Like, is it like a Google search, or do you look and you mentioned peers as well?
Mhm.
What does that really mean?
Sometimes it's Google.
Okay.
We try less to less to lean into Google. Oftentimes it'll be the research organizations
Mm.
that are out there. So I try not to mention names, but you can think sort of the Forrester Gartners of the world, the obvious of the world. Like they're all sort of out there, and
Hmm.
so we definitely partner with those types of research organizations. And then a lot is peer, right? So typically reaching into the network, the sort of board of directors will talk to our peer network through Chime or other channels, and then several of our leaders have networks, of course,
Hmm.
but it's most likely to be that we have sort of when we say survey the market, more often than not we mean we're talking to some channel inside of our network.
Gotcha,
Mhm.
gotcha. I'm going to mention one just because they're I mentioned often
Mhm.
class, those kinds of
Yes,
organizations,
absolutely,
right, to do that research.
absolutely.
So it's good that you mentioned them. What I didn't hear is wandering exhibit hall, right? That's not an area. That does not sound like something you do to discover new solutions.
Not really. It's gonna be somewhat rare that, I would actually wander the exhibit hall. Now, going into the exhibit hall with purpose because I have a problem that I'm looking to chat with someone about, and trying to get through specifically with purpose
Mhm.
is likely to happen. Um, but just sort of wondering in order to meet and sort of gather,
Right.
that's probably not going to be our research route.
Sounds like you're going into the exhibit hall knowing exactly who you want to meet with.
Yes.
You probably already set up a meeting,
Yes.
and it's these vendors that have been vetted already through your peer network or the survey
Absolutely.
that you've done, right?
Yes.
Okay, I like that. I like that. So let's get beyond that next step. So now you've made a couple of decisions on the vendors that you want to take a look at, the
Mhm.
solutions that address the problem that you've identified. What do you look for in a vendor? Like, how do you what are some of the criteria that you're looking for to kind of
Yeah.
qualify them?
So there are a couple of things that for me are really important. I always say I don't want to be the place that startups go to die. And so I need you to be sort of, big enough and sort of meaty enough to actually integrate into the environment, willing to help us really understand your product. If you've solved the problem for others and you're really working to solve the problem for us, understanding some type of standard that you have, that you're really open and honest about your lessons learned. um, and then I think the biggest piece is for us, we like to build partnerships. We like to have stickiness. We want long-term relationships. We want people who are innovative. But I'm also really cognizant of the platform play,
Okay,
and the fact that we don't have a situation where our environments can continue to become more and more complex and convoluted.
gotcha.
And so if you are a really sort of smaller individual point solution, that's going to be a bit tougher for us.
Yeah, we've heard, I mean, I've heard over and over again from people like yourself, other leaders, there is a concerted effort to reduce complexity and
Yes,
reduce the number of vendor relationships that you have.
absolutely.
Best in breed works until you get to about 1,000, and then it becomes unmanageable, right?
Absolutely.
So you're right. Like if you're a standalone solution, that's hard.
Mhm.
You've got to be integrated for one, but
Right.
even better would be if you are embedded in a system
Absolutely.
you've already got.
Or the impact has to be enough to get our attention.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So, who gets involved in the decision to adopt a particular
Mhm.
vendor? Like, is it just you and your team that kind of makes that decision? Do
Oh,
you get
no.
like the operational clinical people involved? Like,
Yes.
okay,
Yes, absolutely. You have to have, I mean, I think understanding and sort of just going through the vetting process or writing an RFP, I try to think about it as the beginning of your change management plan. And so if you don't get your stakeholders involved at that point, oftentimes you'll lose them before you can even start to propose solutions. And so we really try to sort of take the entire journey together. Let's understand the problem together, marry the problem together, understand the solutions together. Our preference is that our team sort of help and take some of the fore on vetting what those solutions kind of look like and making sure they meet our criteria and those types of things. But then we are very tightly aligned with operations, with finance, with our clinical teams. They are involved and they are a part of that impact and transformation committee as we are vetting those solutions.
I know it's hard to answer this next question, but I have to ask it.
Sure.
How much weight do you put on the company and vendor itself
Mhm.
versus the solution that they have? Meaning like their technical prowess, their capability to address the problem versus how well they're funded, who's the CEO or who the people who are building it are. Like, how do you weight those?
Yeah, it is a really hard question to answer. I would say it's mostly going to be weighted on the ability to solve the problem. But I would be transparent and we ask questions about cap table. We want to understand if you're in around. Some of that is creating additional opportunities for stickiness in our partnership,
Mhm.
possibly with the organization. But also, we want to know your longevity. We want to know if we're asking you to solve a really big problem for us, that you're going to have enough funding to see it to the end of the row.
Now, I'm going to ask this question, and what it's not meant for, anyone who's listening and watching, it's not meant to be open season on Ardent Health. But is there a category or a genre of technology that is of interest right now that you're keeping your eye on?
Sure. I think we're really focused on solutions that are easing the burden on clinicians. Anything that helps you to sort of change the burnout, sort of change the physical detriment of the role is
Mhm.
something that is very interesting to us. I think we're all sort of highly aware that we're in a situation where shortages in our clinical teams are going to become more and more difficult. And that includes the interestingly specialties, right? So as
Hmm.
we think about um, lab and pathology and anesthesia and radiology and some of those really interesting places that will create sort of opportunities for enhanced productivity. We're super interested in that. I think we are interested in anything that is helping to um, decrease administrative burden, right? So anything that is making it easier, better, faster, less cumbersome to sort of be an employee, support customers, have customers interact with us. Um, and then I would say this is sort of the day in the land of self service, but easy self service,
Okay.
right? Self service that considers different abilities and self service that really allows folks to have a very seamless experience is also of a lot of interest.
It's interesting you
Please
say.
don't open season
No,
us.
that's. Thank you for saying that again. Reminder: it's
Please
not
don't.
open season on Ardent Health, right? Even though you might have a solution that solves some of these things, but it's interesting you say about the different abilities, right?
Mhm.
I remember the day where comparing yourself to the finance world, and comparing yourself to airlines
Mhm.
was a joke. Like
Right.
they were so bad, but now we actually do compare themselves
We
because like
do.
you can book an airline ticket, you can book a
Mhm.
hotel, you
Mhm.
can do all your banking online, and
Absolutely.
now we all want to bring that into healthcare.
Absolutely. We do. And I do think, right, I used to say that when we started to need um, coordinators, I was worried about us, right? I think about real estate actually, right?
Mm.
And some of the shift that happened there around sort of the ability to self-service, self-rent, self-setup to go and see a rental unit, those types of things. Um, and then the sort of complication of actually acquiring a mortgage and understanding the legalese and all of that. And so it requires a person to sort of help you walk through. My hope is that we're sort of in the land of removing obscurity and creating clarity so that, when we think about sort of everyone who has to walk through healthcare, we used to say fifth grade reading levels, and now we say third grade reading levels. We want to make sure that if we're creating tools for self-service, that they include some level of voice command. And so I think when we think about that holistically, the wonderful thing about that is that it creates a seamless experience for
Mm,
everyone, right? When you are considering everyone as you're trying to build that out.
I love it. Well, you've busted a lot of myths for me today. Let me ask you these questions
Sure.
about what you're doing. What are some of the exciting projects that have come to fruition that you're really proud of at Ardent?
Absolutely. So, super proud of the work that we're doing right now with voice support for providers, right?
Okay.
The ambient technologies that are out there. We are seeing amazing results with those solutions. Most importantly, we're seeing that providers are saying that they're having an incredible experience. They want to stay in the workforce longer. And consumers, our patients, are saying, it's so great to have a conversation with my provider and to get this sort of technology out of the way. So I am incredibly excited about that. I'm incredibly excited about virtual care solutions in the inpatient space, right? And
Interesting. Okay.
yes, so really having that additional support for clinicians that can help reduce administrative burden, really allowing the clinician who's at the bedside to focus on those skilled based items, really focus on the assessment of the patient, those types of things, I think. And you're really going back to almost that teaming environment that we were so accustomed to, and really having that virtual team member be a part of that. Um, and then I would tell you, the interesting thing is I'm excited by some of the changes that we're seeing in infrastructure, right?
Okay.
All of these cool digital tools sit on an infrastructure. And I would just be remiss if I didn't say, because I kind of deeply believe that infrastructure just doesn't get enough limelight, right?
Okay.
We spend a lot of time talking about the app layer and those things that are most impacting workflow, and those things are incredibly important. But at the end of the day, if we're not solving challenges around network and compute and storage and deep storage and all of those types of things, if we're not solving challenges around security and sort of, really deeply security embedded into code, then we create a situation where those cool things might not stand the test of time the way that we want them to. And so I'm also, very excited about what I hope is sort of a change in infrastructure that's going to allow us to democratize these things in a different way as we move forward.
Wow, a lot to unpack there. Like, I can imagine you thinking about like the relative 5G and
Yes,
6G everywhere, right? And when that
absolutely,
comes through, and endpoint security, and
absolutely.
all the visibility that goes along with that, availability,
Yes.
right? And the provision on the spur of a moment
Right.
to,
And how are we really going to solve the digital divide? If we want telehealth to do what it needs to do, how are we thinking about, 5G and 6G and fiber in all of the places where it needs to be, where it can solve those real challenges? And how do we not create greater, just sort of
disparity. Yeah.
disparity
Yeah.
across sort of the globe as we move forward. And so I really think deeply about how do we make sure that everyone gets to participate in healthcare sort of digital transformation, and I think those are the things that will make that possible.
Well, and you've hit on sort of the one of the big challenges of that, right? Which is that digital last mile, right?
Absolutely.
Like, how do we get the not only the infrastructure to support it, how do we
Mhm.
get the devices into the home
Absolutely.
and the people trained up how to use them, and
Yes.
literally put on the network? I mean,
Mhm.
that's not easy for people to know how to,
It's
connect to a
not.
network using a scale.
Right. And it's a different level of competency, right? It's an interesting place to be where we literally have to think about the digital literacy of our consumer in a
Right.
different way. What is the level of digital literacy? How do we support them in that? What are all of sort of the connection points that we need to be forming inside of a population in order to be successful? How are we connected to library services or other places that might be able to provide some of that support as well?
You're obviously very passionate about what you do. You're very excited about what you do. What gets you so excited to come to work every day in healthcare?
I tell people all the time that I am a nurse. I am a nursey nurse. I love healthcare. I absolutely love being able to care for people. And I think that in my role, I get to do that on sort of an exponential scale. And I get so excited when we get it right for clinicians, when we get it right for consumers, when we get it right for our back office teams. And I take great responsibility when we don't get it right, because I've been the nurse standing at the bedside when something didn't work and you were trying to put your best foot forward in order to care for someone. And so I tell people to think about technology like a really important member of the care team. And when we don't do well, it's like a really important member of the care team didn't come to work today or didn't come to work at their best. And so I get really excited because I just think I get to help provide a really awesome member of the care team who shows up at their best every day.
And you have that lived experience, having been a nurse, having been there
Absolutely.
in their shoes. So you know what it's like.
Yes.
You know what it's like. Now, at the risk of encouraging too many nurses to do what you've done, is there a message that you would like to give to any nurse that's listening or watching this that might be interested in pursuing a career more on the digital side of the house?
Sure. I believe that one, I believe the nursing process can solve almost all things. And so I think that so many of our skills are transferable. And we see that in a whole host of careers. We see that in sort of digital and technology spaces. We see it in legal spaces. And so I believe sort of just understanding and taking inventory of those transferable skills is really important. And then I also think taking an approach of curiosity, sort of understanding technology better, spending time trying to get involved in sort of the places where informatics is very helpful, quality and abstracting and all of those really interesting places. And then two, I would say, lastly, I would say spending time with people in sort of various professions. Make sure that you sort of have enough time in it before you decide that you want to do it. In some ways, I had the great fortune of sort of being dropped in this and then loving it and sort of staying here. But I think if you're sort of trying to figure it out, spending some days sort of shadowing or spending some time with is one of the ways to really help you go, do I really want to do that?
Well, Nika, you shared so much great information with us today. Where can people go to learn more about Ardent Health?
So you can go to ardenthealth.com. You can Google us. You can Bing us. You can find us. If you're interested, we also have an investor relations site. And so a whole host of places to find out more about Ardent.
Well, thank you so much for being on our program today. It's been wonderful to have this chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the very thoughtful questions.
Wow. Just wow. There was so much great information that Anika shared. I really appreciated the fact that she was so honest with us and really told us, how email doesn't work and how the fact that she doesn't go into the exhibit halls without a purpose, that she's, very, very selective as to which vendors that they're going to interact with here in an exhibit hall, or how they make decisions and how it's collaborative, how operations gets involved, clinicians get involved, and so forth. Very educational, and it confirmed, frankly, a lot of things that I think we kind of knew on the inside. And just as a quick reminder, this is not an excuse, and please don't use this video as an excuse to go and try and get Anika's attention. She was just using some of those things as examples of what they're looking for and how they look for it. So I certainly really appreciate a lot of our time. This was fantastic. I can't wait to bring you more of this. And hey, if you did enjoy this interview, you'll find more like this on Sway Health. That's Sway with 2 A's, .health. Lots more content out there. And by the way, give this video a like and subscribe. So that way you'll be notified whenever we drop more videos like this. I'm Colin Hung here for Sway Health. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you on the next video.